Hey everybody, happy Monday, happy Facebook Live, happy people. Hope everybody's doing well. I'm gonna start off tonight with just a little bit of a music theory lesson. Lucky you people, you get to learn a little bit about some music theory. Mostly talking about scales. In our Western music, in our Western music ears, we're used to what's called the diatonic music. You don't have to take notes on any of this, but we're used to what's a 7-note major scale. And I'm going to play the 8th note, but it's just so you don't feel... Or a 7-note minor scale. Anyway, we're used to, that's called heptatonic. Aren't you glad you tuned in tonight? But surprise, surprise, there are other scales than what our Western ears are accustomed to. And if you take some of those notes out of our heptatonic 7-note scale, you can have a hexatonic, it's a 6-note scale, or pentatonic. Pentatonic means a 5-note scale. No, it's not just an a cappella group produced by Bill Hare. It's also a scale. The best way to understand pentatonic scale is to look at the black notes on the piano, because they form a pentatonic scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The cool thing about that is you can start on any note. A lot of non-Western music is based around pentatonic scale, particularly from Asian countries and from African countries. I tell you all this because tonight you get a Black Keys Only Facebook Live. This was inspired by a talk I heard a couple days ago by Reverend Otis Moss III, who is a phenomenal preacher, prophetic witness, artist. He's pastor of Trinity United Church of Christ in Chicago and is doing powerful social justice ministry and arts-based social justice ministry. If you want to check something that's very beautiful and challenging and moving out, look up his Requiem for Ahmaud Arbery. Anyway, in this talk a couple days ago, he talked about how we're used to the standard story of Amazing Grace being from John Newton, and John Newton did indeed write the words to that, and John Newton, you probably know, was a captain of a slave ship, and popular myth is, he repented and wrote the hymn. It's more complicated than that. Probably didn't repent quite as soon as we would have wished for that story. But anyway, I'm talking a lot tonight. Anyway, the tune for Amazing Grace is a pentatonic tune, meaning it only uses 5 notes. In our hymnals, it either says Early American Melody or Origin Unknown. And the thing about that, John Newton filled his ships with people who ended up being origin unknown, even though they were from a very known origin and a place that was home. So there's a lot of theories that perhaps this tune to Amazing Grace originated in Africa, or originated with some of the early slaves brought over. So anyway, I think that's an amazing story about Amazing Grace, and So I'm going to play that and a few other hymns that you may recognize that are pentatonic hymns. And I'm only going to play black notes unless I slip and hit a white note by accident. Sometimes I just think it helps to hear things in new ways that helps us hear them with newly opened ears, and certainly how that has affected me. So hopefully that's how it hit you tonight too. Have a good rest of your night, and stay cool and stay connected. See you again on Wednesday.